welcome back to Talking Live. It's been a while, so we are so happy to be reporting again in 2023. And we are starting off with Rob Shooter, one of my favorite people, favorite guests. He is also a top podcaster for Naughty But Nice with Rob Shooter, and you've seen him on multiple national shows. He's the best. Welcome back, Rob.
It's lovely to see you, my friend. It's been way too long, and you're being so kind about the introduction. And a lot of that success comes with a little help from you too. What people out there might not realize is that you got me my book deal. You did.
Well, you got yourself the book deal, but this is a business of friendships and connections, and we're all in it together. So when I believe in somebody, I want them to share their best self. And you have a great book out there. Do you want to plug it?
No, it's a great, the forward answer. It's doing great. I think I'm on GMA in a couple of weeks to talk about it. And I really enjoyed writing it. And it's all my experiences of working with celebrities, maybe not a gossipy book, which I think people are surprised about. It's really life lessons I learned from them. Working with some of the biggest stars in the world was such a gift. I worked as their publicist, but what I learned very quickly is that I had a front row seat at these incredibly successful people, and it really was an education, a university class in being successful. And so I wrote down all the things that I learned from these really extraordinary people, and thanks to you and other friends, it got published. And I ended up one of the bestsellers on Amazon. It was really thrilling. So the book's still out there.
Well, I am so excited for you, and you deserve all the success that you're enjoying right now. And we also know that you have an insider perspective to the royals because you're originally from England. And this book is making a splash. Spare, as we know, written by Prince Harry. And I believe it just is selling amazingly well and was like the top selling nonfiction book the day that it came out.
Yeah, the numbers changed a little bit. So the publisher put out a statement really tooting their own horn with total credibility. The book's doing very well, but then towards the end of the week is when you really get book numbers. I've learned all this recently doing it myself. I should be so lucky to get those Harry numbers.
So all of us, right?
Incredibly well, but I think it's actually going to fall just behind Barack Obama and Michelle Obama's book. Don't feel bad. Still lots and lots of books, and it hasn't stopped selling. It's going to have a second wave and a third wave, but very exciting, making lots of news that we'll get into today.
And I imagine that it will be made into a movie at some point as well.
Yeah, he owns the rights to this along with his publisher. So I imagine that anything this successful, whether it be a Harry Potter book or a book about a former prince, this stuff gets a lot of interest, and it's really interesting. We've joked about this before, and I think it's so true in what we do in show business. It's feast or famine. There's no middle class. You're either working on a project that is so hot that it has lots of spin-off effects, and that's delicious, or a project that doesn't do very well and it disappears. And so here is the example of really producing it. It's a beautiful book. I read it when it first came out, and it's a great read. And you're right, this book's going to have legs. It's going to go on to live in many different forms. I would imagine too, maybe it's too tacky, but you never know now, this new world we live in. I could see him selling T-shirts with Spare on them. I'd say a baseball cap with Spare. I know it makes you sort of shudder a little bit, but this is still going to make a lot of money. This copyright is going to be around for a long time.
The question that I have is, he got paid a lot of money for this book. Do we know if he is keeping all of the money or donating parts of the money?
He said that he's going to give a percentage away. I'm always really cautious when celebrities say this. I used to be the executive editor of OK Magazine, where we literally paid celebrities millions of dollars for their baby pictures or their wedding pictures, and often in the press release to announce they were going to be on the cover in their wedding dress or with their new babies, they'd always want a sentence in that a percentage went to charity. In my
Mhm.
experience, we wrote one check. I don't ever remember writing a check to a charity and a celebrity. Now, in their defense, you could send them a check and they could carve that up and
Yeah.
send it on to their charities. So he said a percentage. They haven't said how much here, but I think honestly, this is how he's going to make his living now. He's not getting any money from his dad, Prince Charles, who funds William and Kate, and he also did fund Harry and Meghan. That has gone. That money is gone. So now Harry has to pay his bills, and he lives literally like a prince. Literally like a prince. It's very expensive. So the money from the book is an extraordinary amount, but it's not the type of money that gives you Buckingham Palace. He lives very well in California, but he doesn't live in a palace. It's a beautiful home, a beautiful home. Don't feel bad for him. But he no longer has the best house in the neighborhood. That would be Oprah.
I have to say, I was a little surprised because when I heard about this book, I was like, oh no, I don't want to hear more whining. And I was actually struck by just psychologically how almost sorry I felt for him, because it's one thing to have a lot of money, but it really sounds like he didn't have anyone to turn to. There were no wise kind of people in his life that could help him navigate the grief that he experienced after Princess Diana. There was the rivalry with his brother. It just sounds like he was truly, truly lost.
It does, and it comes across in the book. I think we've seen a lot of people be really successful. And for me, what makes me the most happy is when a celebrity or even a friend has a really successful project that brings them joy. And that combination together is just that you like to see, whether it's Hoda getting the Today Show job or friends of ours who have gone on to get amazing jobs and made a lot of money and become famous in the process. I love seeing that. The Harry one is really tragic for me because he did make a lot of money, but I don't think anybody would argue that this book has brought him any joy or maybe, dare I say, any peace. It's a very angry read. I watched those interviews very carefully as a reporter, as someone that's covered the royal family and worked for the royal family. I was once the publicist for Princess Michael of Kent here in America. So I know this family. And I thought before the book came out, I thought this was going to be his moment of liberation. This was going to finally put a period on the past and he was going to move on. And I just don't now believe that's the case. It's a very angry book, and telling these stories didn't seem to me to make him any happier.
I don't know if you remember, but Nancy and Ronnie Reagan had a daughter. I believe her name was, is it Patty? No.
I think so. Yeah, she wrote an op-ed about it. Yeah.
I thought her op-ed was so brilliant. And this clearly is a woman who's had a lot of therapy. And she was saying if she could talk to Prince Harry, she would tell him to keep quiet because there are lots of different truths. And once you put something out there, I always say, I am so happy for all the things I never said. I've never regretted what I've never said, ever. It's best put in the forget file and moving on. And this is really true, even from a psychological perspective. There's his truth, there's the family's truth, and then there's a more objectified truth when the intensity of your emotions subside. And he really hasn't gotten there. As you said, it's a very angry book. And what is the fallout going to be for him? Can he reconnect with the royal family, with his father, with his brother, with his sister-in-law, after all of the negative things he has said about them?
Right. It's a really good question. May 6th is going to be a really telling day on the calendar. That's the coronation. I believe he will go. I know he'll be invited. But I don't know if he will go. If he does go, it's going to be a very difficult day for him and really the family too. He said some really awful things about this family. And let's remember too, this book had gone to bed by the time his grandmother died. So they hadn't yet been printed, but we know how books work and you can't just turn out 400 pages in a week. The majority of this book had already been put to bed. So when he was at his grandmother's funeral, sitting in that room with them, sitting in Windsor Castle with them, sitting in Balmoral with them, He knew what he was about to drop. They didn't. This book came as a total surprise to them. All my royal sources said they really did try to get hold of this book. Have you ever seen the movie The Devil Wears Prada, and Miranda Priestley is trying to get hold of the Harry Potter book for her twins? That the royal family. They were calling around, really trying to get hold of this book, and they couldn't. And so they found out about this book on the same day we did. They knew he would detail stuff. I think William feared he'd detail the confrontation, the physical confrontation between the two boys. What they were not prepared for is how vicious it would be towards Kate and towards Camilla, the Queen Consort. And Kate always felt like his big sister. He said that. The three of them together were so cute in London. And I think they knew Harry was struggling. And Kate and William sort of took him under their wing when they were starting to date. I think they wanted to go out as a couple, and they always dragged Harry along with them. And so to turn on Kate, I think it's going to be really hard for William to forgive. And now William has felt that crown on his head. He doesn't have it yet. He will be the next king. And hopefully Charles has a long and healthy reign. But let's be honest, he's up there in his 70s. It's not the reign that his mom had for all those years. So Charles could be a relatively short king. William's next. And he's thinking about the institution as well as himself. And what Harry's done, he can't undo. Going back to what you said, words, he said it. It's out there. He can't say either it was misinterpreted. You can say that about a television interview, but a book's a book. It's there. You said it. You thought about it. You got the galleys. You got to choose what to take out. Harry shockingly said the book originally was 800 pages and he cut it in half because he didn't want to reveal some of their really deepest secrets, which is a really sort of mean thing for him to say too, because it plays into that narrative of almost blackmail. Like, I've got more. I've got to tell her. And so I don't think it will ever be the same. But what's really interesting to me, and a big takeaway from the book, is it never was as good as we all thought. They weren't they weren't soulmates. They weren't best man at one another's weddings. To the media, the moment Diana passed, these two boys had a special bond. Not true. They didn't. They never had a special bond. It was all an illusion. And I think that's why so many of us can really, really relate to this book, because we look at these princes the same way we scroll through Instagram thinking everything's perfect. It never was.
Well, no relationship is ever perfect. And I think with the sibling relationship, there's always kind of that sibling rivalry that threads through the relationship. And it's always a work in progress, because childhood is such a strong emotional kind of impact on our psyche. And it's always there. And we're always kind of thinking through how we feel about our siblings, both in childhood and in adulthood. So that didn't shock me. I think what shocked me, and I wonder what the damage is for the royal family, is the whole Nazi incident. And Harry saying that he asked Kate and William for their thoughts. Now, this was before Kate was married into the royal family, and that they laughed and encouraged him and gave him very poor advice. How do you see kind of his reveals impacting the royal family? Because it's not a guarantee, right? We've had royal families in the past who no longer exist, or exist in name, but not pomp and circumstance.
Right, yeah, talk to the Russian Tsar. He's gone. The Tsar's gone. So this can happen. I think the impact is significant moving forward if they don't take note. So this family has survived a lot, and we really should think of them here as a company. This company has survived a lot. Think of a big brand, one of the biggest brands in the world that has had a terrible disaster happen. I think after the God forbid, an airline comes down. Once an airline comes down, that brand, that airline has to really work hard to reestablish trust with the public. And I think that's what we're going to see from the royal family. It's interesting you mentioned Nazis. This family's had a long, complicated history of the Third Reich. He's the Queen's uncle, abdicated, And a lot of people
Mhm.
argue he abdicated because of love, like Harry. A lot of historians would say he abdicated because he was a supporter of Hitler. And so there's some
Hmm.
evidence of that too. There's pictures of him, the king, making a Nazi salute. And so this family's had a very complicated history. I think big picture for me, if they can survive the death of Princess Diana, where I thought they mishandled everything so
Mm.
profoundly, right down to the fact they wouldn't lower the flag on Buckingham Palace, if they can bounce back from that, which they did, I think they can bounce back from this book. But it's going to be interesting because they're going to have to now decide what sort of family they are. The racist allegations in the book,
Mm.
which are difficult because he seems to have walked those back a little bit in an interview he did with the BBC. So I do think companies, which is what the royal family is, can survive, but they have to take stock. And I think that's what Prince Charles is doing. I've followed him for a long time. I've met him several times. I wouldn't be as bold as to say I know him, but he's a very thoughtful man. He's not
Mm.
a loud man. He's been mocked in the past for really being kind of a philosophical figure. He knows there's going to be changes, and I'll predict we're going to have a much smaller royal family that cost the country a lot less money, and we're going to
Mhm.
see their work now. So when they're out there promoting Britain and the crown, they're going to let us know that they're doing that. But the family now is basically Charles, his wife Camilla, his son William, Kate, his sister Anne, and his younger brother, not Prince Andrew.
So I have a couple of questions. One, it was reported somewhere that Princess Anne is the most popular royal now. Is that true?
She's the hardest working royal. So if you actually look at her schedule, she has more engagements each year. And it's a great question. What do they actually do? And there's a lot of events, ribbon cuttings, like stuff that sounds very glamorous. But I describe it to my friends who think this sounds glamorous. It's like going to a birthday party every day if you don't enjoy a birthday party. It's a lot of
Yeah.
strangers coming up to you and shaking your hand. You got to make chit chat with people you're never going to see again every day. And they're very good at it. So Anne does a lot of work. I think the most popular royal, though, it's still William and Kate. Since the book, their popularity plummeted about 8 points, but it's still in
Yeah.
70 range. So it's still high up there. And I think they're going to be the future. Everything about
Absolutely.
reign is going to be about handing the baton to his son. We're going to see a smaller royal family. I was talking to a source of mine in Britain who said they could see Buckingham Palace be turned into a museum, and maybe
Hmm.
and Kate will live in a townhouse in London, much more like the Swedish royal family.
Yeah.
Have all the trappings, but the really expensive stuff, Windsor Castle, the palace, that could be turned back over to the people.
I just want to say something about Harry is that throughout the book, we see that feeling of abandonment was so strong. And I think the reason why he turned on Kate is because Kate took William away. And also, it sounds like Kate didn't like Meghan.
Right.
And Harry was so in love with Meghan. He wanted everyone to be in love with her. And what is the feeling about her now, both in Britain and in the United States? Because although Prince Harry conflates Princess Diana with Meghan, I see them as totally different personalities.
Yeah, they're very, very different. I met Meghan Markle several times when she was an actress, and she was in it to win it. And I say that with total admiration. This is
Mm-hmm.
somebody who cold called the Wendy Williams show and turned up at their office, sat down with a friend of ours, Mark Lupo, said she turned up at the office. He's a booker there, and he had to sit with her for half an hour as she tried to get on the show. And ultimately, she did not. She did the same with the Today Show. So this is somebody who hustled, really hustled to be famous. Now she's probably one of the most famous people in the world. It's complicated because the Brits want to blame her for everything. So in Britain, her popularity, she might be the most unpopular person in Britain. So they do not see it through her eyes at all. I'm told the family is actually more generous towards her. They knew Harry had issues. They knew Harry was struggling. They're happy he found Meghan. And as one close source told me, had it not been Meghan, it would have been someone even more problematic. So they're actually happy. He could have ended up really, I don't want to paint this picture too dramatically, but they were frightened he'd end up like with drug dealers. They were frightened he would end up
Wow.
homeless. They were
Huh.
frightened he would, join a political party that they didn't want any part of. Like, they were
Oh.
worried about Harry. So Meghan is very strong. They don't see eye to eye, but I think they respect the fact that she will take care of him mentally as well as his heart. And I think they know she loves him. I think they wish them a happy life in America. I'm not convinced they believe he's found that happy life yet. And a lot of people would agree with them on that. They don't hate Meghan. The British public does. In America, it's more complicated because I think having an American princess, the first biracial princess, there's a lot of love for America. I do this podcast each day, so iHeart hired me to do a daily podcast each morning, just 20 minutes of celebrity gossip. And the thing is about podcasts, they're available around the world. So about 20% of my listeners are from the UK. And goodness, they let me know when I defend Meghan a little bit too much. And so trying to keep the peace everywhere for reporters like myself, it's almost impossible. I will be worried if Meghan returns to Britain with Harry in May for the coronation. She could potentially be booed. When she walks into Westminster Abbey, I think they should bring her in through a side door, because if she walks up those steps, the people outside could boo her. They're really angry. She's become the Yoko Ono of the royal family. They blame her. Not true. It's not all her fault here.
Oh my God, it's totally not. I think part of the appeal for Harry with Meghan, obviously he's in love with her, but that she had the strength to walk away and bring him into a new life. He wanted it. If he didn't want it, he wouldn't do it. But she helped him.
He was looking for an exit strategy, and I don't want to call it an exit ramp. She's not. She's a human being, an incredible human being, but he was looking for somebody to get him out of this family, and he found it.
He certainly did. Just to talk about American royalty, Lisa Marie Presley sadly died. Many of us saw her at the Golden Globes, and I remember watching her in real time and thinking, she does not look well. I did not know what was wrong with her, obviously, and I don't know if anyone did. What do your sources say? We're finding out so much about her and her life prior to her death.
She had a really sad life. Like, I've interviewed her several times. I had reporters at the Golden Globe who were texting me how bad she looked and behaved. And it was a really sad life. Her dad passed away at 9 years old. She was going back and forth from Graceland, where her dad lived, to Hollywood, where her mom lived. And then when her dad died, it became this huge burden. She became the really living heir of Elvis Presley. And her entire life, she tried to run away from that legacy. But at the same time, that legacy was paying the bills. I say, if you pay for it, then you can pave it. You can pave your own way if you're paying your bills. But when you're coming from that, it's just so complicated. She almost didn't stand a chance. Part of me wishes, instead of getting into the entertainment business, she'd opened a flower shop, or she'd just done something so different. She was never successful as her dad. I think we see this a lot with kids of huge stars. We've seen it, Judy Garland's daughters. We've seen it with celebrities all the time. And I'm worried at the moment about Madonna's kids. Like, Madonna seems to have done a really good job raising them, but now her daughter is going into the music business. And so, as glamorous as it looks to be American royalty, which Lisa Marie was, I mean, her dad was literally it's not all that great. And so a lot of money there, but also too brought in a lot of shady people. It's reported that she went through 100 million. She died in debt. And so ultimately just a sad life. And I was watching the coverage of the funeral, and it just made me sad. There wasn't any highlights. It just made me sad.
Yeah, I felt the same way, because she seemed like a really nice, authentic person who had a hard time finding her way for whatever reason. And I guess it's a real blessing to be able to have the support systems that you need, and that fame and money is no substitute for that. It's certainly nice to have it if everything else is in place, but if it's not, it could be quite torturous. Rob Shooter, I love you, and I don't care if the whole world knows it. Where can people find you if they don't know already?
You're so lovely. If you want to support me, the best way to do it is to check out my podcast. It's a daily show on iHeartRadio, 20 minutes of celebrity gossip and cheeky celebrity fun. We're not mean girls. It's called Naughty But Nice, and that's exactly what we are. We're a pinch, we're not a punch. We're definitely a little cheeky, but we're not mean. So 5 days a week, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcasts, Naughty But Nice with Rob.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining Talking Live in 2023. We look forward to having our audience back and more to come.